What's up everybody? Nate here. Insider trading has been a growing part of the business and financial world for a long time now. Recently though, it has taken up an even bigger part of the spotlight after some controversies with some Federal Reserve presidents, members of Congress, and CEOs of top businesses on Wall Street. However, up to this point, nobody in Congress or in the SEC has really been able to tackle this insider trading issue. However, all of that might be changing today as Congress is moving forward with a bill that would completely ban members of our federal government from trading and buying stocks. And this would be a huge deal because it has implications of what our market means and who is able to buy and trade stocks. It basically questions the actual freedoms of our market and if we can actually dictate who can buy and sell stocks. But it also could mean that insider trading basically goes away forever. So today I want to talk all about this brand new bill that has been introduced in Congress and what it's going to mean for the stock market and insider trading. But before I get into all of that, if you haven't already, do me a quick favor and hit, smash, or destroy that thumbs up button below and ring that notification bell too. Both of those two things are completely free and they help to show me that you like this video, that you want to see even more just like it. Thank you so much for doing that. Now let's talk all about insider trading from Capitol Hill to Wall Street. So this whole insider trading thing has been a saga so far. It kind of hit the mainstream back in November 2021 after it was found out that some Fed officials may have participated in some insider trading. Those two Fed officials ended up making millions of dollars off their investment. And while they say that everything was completely legit and reported correctly, they also ended up retiring years early and abandoning their posts. Very shortly after, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell completely banned stock trading amongst Fed officials. And we thought that was going to be the end of it until it came out that Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, had made some fishy trades over the last 2 years as well. Now again, everything that she bought and sold was completely disclosed and you can find all of the information and transcripts through the Freedom of Information Act. And when asked about it, Nancy Pelosi basically said that Congress members should be allowed to trade and buy stocks. She said that it's a free market and we shouldn't limit anybody from trying to build wealth through assets. But all of a sudden now in February 2022, her narrative has completely changed. Nancy Pelosi and other members of Congress are now completely open to banning stock trading amongst Congress. And right now, the House Administration Committee is working on a bill that would effectively do just that. Now, there hasn't been too many specific details about this bill yet, but Chuck Schumer of the Senate and Nancy Pelosi from the House are open to making a bill just like this. And they're working on it right now. What this bill ultimately looks like is going to depend. So the way that the Federal Reserve did it, Jerome Powell said that Fed officials cannot buy or trade individual stocks. So for instance, they can't buy shares specifically in McDonald's and then sell them at any particular period of time. No, what they're allowed to do now is only purchase index funds or ETFs. An index fund or an ETF is basically a group of individual stocks. The person that buys those stocks isn't able to control the individual investments within the ETF or index fund. The investor basically just puts their money into this investment, and if all of the companies do well in that index, then the index ultimately goes up. You're buying a partial share of ownership in all of those companies. And the way that you make money is eventually when your asset has appreciated so much, you will sell your investment, and just like any other stock, you'll make a profit from it. This way, members of Congress and the Federal Reserve aren't buying particular stocks and then selling them at very odd moments in time. And the reason this has become such a big issue lately is because it was found out that Nancy Pelosi and other members of Congress were buying millions of dollars in shares in some massive companies during the pandemic. Nancy Pelosi in particular bought millions of dollars of stock in Apple right around when the pandemic was starting. Now, the reason this is so controversial is because Apple ended up exploding in value during this time. And the reason they exploded in value is because there was all of a sudden a great need for technology. Not only was there a push for all of Apple's cloud services, there was also a push for Apple's technology, like MacBooks. Employees and students were now going to be working and going to school from home, and you need a laptop if you're going to be attending virtual classes. And it's not really a problem that she bought all of these shares, it's the timing of it, and that's what's looking a bit sus for the average American. Like I said, she purchased these shares right around when the pandemic was starting, but the United States government had direct control over economic lockdowns all throughout the country, which led people to believe that she knew that the economy was going to shut down and knew that there was going to be a lot more need for technology, so she bought these shares. Now they've appreciated so much in value that she can sell them for a massive profit. And she bought them at a huge discount at the time. The same thing happened with the Federal Reserve back in November 2021. There were two Federal Reserve presidents, the Federal Reserve president in Boston and the Federal Reserve president in Dallas. They ended up making millions of dollars off their individual investments by buying some pretty big companies and securities right around when the Federal Reserve was going to do so. They ended up pouring millions of dollars into corporate bonds just days before Jerome Powell was going to have an impromptu meeting before Congress. And then in that meeting, the Federal Reserve announced that it was going to launch its quantitative easing program, where it was going to buy hundreds of billions of dollars in corporate bonds. So you can see how that's a bit of an issue. Again, it's just the timing here. They ended up doing that right at a time that those assets were going to explode. But what makes it potential insider trading is that those officials, and in Nancy Pelosi's case, members of Congress, had information that nobody else had. Insider trading is basically when you make a trade based on information that only you know about. So for instance, if you buy shares of Apple right before they launch a major product and the share price goes up, then that would be insider trading, especially if you knew that the product was going to come out and it was supposed to be a surprise to everyone else. Or if you knew exactly what was going to be on a company's earnings report and you bought and sold depending on what that information was going to be. You can't do that. It's supposed to be a free market where everybody has the same access to information. Congress, of course, has access to information that nobody else has. And they make big decisions for our country that ultimately dictate how the stock market is going to behave. So for instance, just hypothetically speaking here, if Nancy Pelosi owns thousands of shares in Facebook and then sells those shares and a week later announces that she's going to be banning social media apps in the United States, well, that would be kind of an insider trading situation, right? Because regular investors didn't know that she was going to announce that new bill, but she got ahead of it and already sold her stocks, meaning everybody else is in a bad position to sell theirs. But the real question here is this really insider trading by definition? Like I said, insider trading is technically when you know something that no one else knows that will influence your trading of a particular asset. So if you know a company is going to do something and you sell your asset before or after that happens, well, then that is insider trading. However, this is where things kind of get a little muddy because Congress doesn't directly have influence over the stock market. Sure, they can make laws that limit certain things, but they don't control the free market. They don't control the companies on the New York Stock Exchange. They don't control investors. So if they make a landmark bill that bans something or pushes something up, like we saw with the infrastructure bill, well, Wall Street is going to react a certain way, and Congress knows that Wall Street is going to act a certain way. So is it right or wrong for them to capitalize on that decision? I mean, it really depends. It depends on if they're doing it just to make money, well then yeah, that's pretty much insider trading. But Congress is supposed to, keyword supposed to, have the interest of the American people in mind. They're supposed to keep their constituents' values and ideas in mind when making bills. So technically they frame it by saying that's all they're doing here. And then they happen to capitalize on that after Wall Street reacts. But they do the before action, and their before action is completely public to the United States. It's not like a bill is passed in private and nobody knows about it. every bill that is passed from the state level to the federal level is completely public knowledge. Wall Street then reacts to that. It's not like Wall Street has insider information to what Congress is going to do. I mean, they can have a general idea, but just like right now what the stock market is reeling with when they think about the Federal Reserve and raising interest rates. They don't know when the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates, and they don't know by how much. If they did, then that would influence their trading. But they don't, which is part of the reason why the stock market has been so volatile. Investors are guessing and getting emotional about what could happen. Now, there have been other insider trading bills that Congress has presented recently. One in particular has been presented by Elizabeth Warren. Now, this would do all of the same things that the Federal Reserve ban did, except for it would also extend to spouses and children of the Congress member. That's one loophole that a lot of people immediately pointed out when you talk about banning stock trading for Congress members. They're just gonna have their spouse do it or their kids do it, so it doesn't really matter. This bill by Elizabeth Warren would actually ban family members of Congress members from owning stocks as well. That way, basically nobody connected to the congressperson can buy stocks, and there can be no insider trading. I mean, I guess they could get like a friend to do it or something, but it's gonna be pretty difficult for a congressperson to prove that they gave their friend millions of dollars and then, oh, their friend gave them millions of dollars back, just as a gift, I suppose. Other members of Congress like AOC have talked about allowing Congress to set up blind trusts for their investments. So a blind trust would basically be the congressperson puts money into an account and then the trust invests that money for them. And on top of that, the Congress member has no idea how that money is being invested. So it's basically an actively managed fund that the congressperson has no control over or no insight of how it's running. That gets kind of complicated too because we don't know the level of communication between the Congress member and the blind trust members. Congress member might still have a lot of influence over that trust. And while they don't tell them to put their money into particular assets, they may tell them that they're thinking about passing particular bills that might affect certain companies down the road, which will ultimately affect the trust. So this system isn't perfect here, but ultimately what they're trying to do is limit Congress from buying and trading stocks, so that way we have no insider trading amongst people who are supposed to be for the public and not in it for their own personal gain. And it really begs the question of how free our market is, because if a bill goes through like this, well, now we are specifically limiting certain groups of people because of their jobs and the amount of power that they have. Nobody likes to be limited, like at the beginning of 2021 when Robinhood limited millions of investors from buying and trading shares of GameStop. Robinhood was the bad guy there because they were basically protecting the hedge funds and limiting retail investors. Well, now the people actually want Congress to be limited in what they can buy and sell. And the situation is kind of similar if you think about it, because big communities online, like Reddit's Wall Street Bets, basically said on this day and on this time, everybody buy shares of GameStop. That ultimately pushed up the price of GameStop and hurt the big hedge funds, because these hedge funds had big short positions in GameStop and other companies. GameStop's value went through the roof. Is that any different than Congress saying they're going to pass a bill at a specific date and time and then Wall Street following suit with their investments? Look, I'm not advocating for one side or the other here. All I'm saying is that this issue is super complex, and it really begs the question about how free our market is. But with all that being said, now I want to hear from you on this issue. What do you think about Nancy Pelosi and Congress proposing a brand new bill that would essentially ban all members of Congress from buying and trading stocks? In addition, do you think our market should be completely free and anybody should be allowed to buy and trade stocks? Or do you think that certain individuals should be limited from doing so? As always, whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below before you go. That is it for today's business and financial news breakdown. I hope you liked this video. And if you're looking for more daily business and financial news breakdowns, our team puts together a free newsletter breaking down all of the top business and financial news. And if you want to sign up for that, you can do so by clicking the link right here. And if you're looking for more business and financial news breakdowns 7 days a week, I'm putting out uploads every single day. And I've actually got a video right here for you to check out before you go. That is it for me, everybody. Be kind out there, and I'll see you all in the next one.